I thought I would talk a little bit about thought, and specifically about unexamined thought. Not so much to talk about where it comes from or what it is necessarily, but actually just to shine a light on the incredible and immense power of thought to destroy or to create, and how when it's left unexamined, all hell can break loose. And in many ways we are at the behest, at the mercy of whatever thought happens to be arising in any particular moment. And let's face it, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts that arise in each of us, in each day, in each hour, in each minute. And they come and they come and they come. They're like the waves, right? They really are like the waves, and some of them are crashing and full of froth and as if anger or heat or turbulence. And some other ones, they lap gently against the shore, upon the shore, and they never touch the sort of peace of us. But there we are. Amazing, right? And thought can take us down. We believe, because in what I'm going to be getting to is not the fact of thought itself, because, thought is, let's say, it's just inert. And it doesn't, in many ways, it doesn't matter. What matters is the influence that it has on us, and how hardwired, or seemingly hardwired at least, we are to these thoughts that arise up, that come from within. What we think come from within, but maybe they don't come from within so much as we imagine they come from within. But it's the influence of them, and it's the stuckness that we have to them, where any kind of thought that arises, conscious or unconscious, can influence our mood in any given moment. You can think a negative thing about yourself, or about the world, or about your neighbour, or about life, or about reality, or about awakening, or about anything. And if it carries a negative charge, then it brings down the system, lowers it, let's say, sort of suppresses the life force, especially when they're directed at self. But even when they're directed at others, they're still directed at self. So when I say, the world is this, the world is falling apart, that's not a neutral statement. That's a statement of thought that I have, that I maybe believe to be reality. I believe my thought because the evidence is showing me somehow, whatever evidence that is, whether it's the news here or the news there. News is suspicious and suspect these days. It's that information, it's what that person said, it's what I saw on X, it's what I saw on, CNN or wherever it is. And I've decided that the world is falling apart. And that makes me feel a certain way. It makes me feel anxious, afraid, angry, powerless, depressed, whatever it is. And so we've believed the thought that we've had. But I would say, there are many levels to this conversation. One is to not be so blind about believing every thought that arises in you, and to examine This is the nature of self-inquiry. It's not just to ask the question, who am I? But it's actually also to examine the nature of what is this thought that I'm having? What is this thinking? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of thinking. I think it's very powerful, very positive, very powerful, highly creative, has the capacity for incredible ingenuity, creativity, invention, you know, all of these kind of qualities. Can build things. Thinking is the very fabric of us. But like all aspects of the human condition, or of life in many ways, of form, there's a negative component to it. And so left unexamined or fueled by unresolved issues within oneself, trouble, trauma, you know, difficulty, resentment, anger, unprocessed emotions. And thought tends to be the, you know, the touch point, the fire point of those unresolved emotions. And that thought is like where the unresolved meets the surface of us. If it's unresolved, it might be swimming around somewhere down here in the deep, and then something happens and it triggers us in some way, shape or form, and up comes, you know, the energy, and it can quite easily arise as a thought, conscious thought. Of course, he shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't be doing this, I screwed up, I've made a mess. You know, negativity. Or else it can be an unconscious thought that doesn't quite make it to the surface, but still has a huge impact. Thinking isn't just what arises. Thinking happens on deeper and deeper levels. It's an incredible thing, thinking. Thought. It has a sort of linear quality to it, a horizontal quality to it, but it also has a deep verticality to it, higher thought, lower thought. And so we need to kind of take charge somehow through a deeper willingness to examine, to self-inquiry, to the inquiry of thought, like to see where is it coming from. Not just where is it coming from, but what am I believing in any given moment? I certainly have found freedom, a deeper freedom, in being much more discerning about which thoughts that I believe and which thoughts I don't, without going into la-la land, without bypassing, without ignoring, denying, defending, pushing away, and without being just sort of too la-la about it. Actually, to really get to grips with my thinking. We have the capacity for mastery of thought. In the same way we have the capacity for mastery of our addictive nature. In the same way we have the capacity for mastery of our very habits, which are all different aspects of the same thing, because the lower driver of habits is emotion and thought. Thought is essential to look at, and how we make connections that in many ways we don't need to make, because we're determined to end up at the conclusion, the conclusive thought. I've decided that it's like this, I'm like this, the world is like this, he's like this, he shouldn't have done that, they shouldn't have done that, because actually the conclusive thought gives us ground. Somehow it gives us control, it gives us a sense of self. The conclusive thought affirms the self. And so we're determined to hang on to that. In fact, that's more primary than even whether the thought is good, bad, or positive or negative. That doesn't matter on a certain level of us. What really matters on a certain level of us is just to have the conclusive thought, for the thought to give us a sense of control and definition, ground. That's how much we use thought in so many ways. And obviously I'm kind of trying to dive into a deeper aspect of looking at it, or relating to it, should I say. And it's important that we examine for ourselves, what that really means. How many of these thoughts am I attaching to that are just, in the cold light of day, causing me suffering because I believe them to be real? In fact, the whole world is built on this principle in so many ways. Thought. Religion is, in many ways, at least the superficial nature of religion, is built on thought. I think, because I've read and I've been told, I think that my God is better than your God, and I'm willing to go to war for it. And that's unexamined. Examining thought is a way to get to the soul in many ways, to get to the deeper nature of us. Because by and by, when you really examine thought and you start to kind of break the relationship of addictive allegiance to one's own thinking, then you start to kind of really question what you know and what you don't know, what you think and what you don't think, what your thought is and what it's not, whether it's true or whether it might not be true. You don't even have to believe that it's not true. You just have to be open to the possibility that it might not be true. And that opens a door to a deeper exploration, a deeper capacity to fall into maybe the unknown, because that's where this is heading. To disattach from so much, reliance on believing our thoughts eventually takes us into the unknown. And then in the unknown, we're like, it changes something fundamentally for us. It changes the nature of how we are, because we begin to doubt something. And even though that doubting something about us or about the world or about how we perceive the world, that doubt itself opens the door to a deeper sense of life. As I said in a Substack, like recently, last week, doubt is the doorway to a deeper trust, but only when we examine it. And doubt is to have a doubt around not just one's existence, but actually one's thinking. So this is a really, really, really powerful exploration. Thinking, thought itself. Let thought be the inquiry. Let thought. What is this thought that I don't examine? Is it true? Is it possible that it's not true? And if it's not true, then what? Then where am I? Who am I? What am I? Where am I standing? And what does that bring up for me? If thought is not reliable, and I'm talking about superficially, I'm not talking about mental illness, I'm not talking about, chaos. I'm talking about the capacity for that to take us deeper into our integrity as autonomous beings, not just, flotsam and jetsam floating around on the surface of our lives, at the mercy of everything, at the mercy of forces that we feel are out of control. This is a shift from, in many ways, a shift from victim consciousness, from being a victim of our thinking, which is really what happens to many people, from being a victim of our thinking to being a master of our thinking, but not by controlling it, but by examining the truth of it. Bless you.